I bet that you haven't used at least one perk combination on this list. What is going on, guys? My name is Kyle and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be going over the top 10 best killer perk combinations in Dead by Daylight. I'm sorry for sounding a bit different today. I am coming out of a head cold, but I still wanted to get a video out for you guys this week. So if you guys enjoy this one and want to see more like this, feel free to drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Also, come join my Discord server. The link is in the description. Coming in at the 10th spot is Pain, Resonance, and Dead Man Switch. This is a really interesting combo because Pain Resonance is really new, but it's basically a Scourge Hook perk where if you hook someone on a Scourge Hook, the generator with the most progression explodes, instantly losing 15% of its progress and starts to regress. And Dead Man Switch basically makes it so that if a survivor gets off of a generator, it gets blocked for a certain amount of time. And when a generator explodes, it counts as that survivor getting off. So when you hook someone, Pain Resonance is going to activate on that gen. It's going to blow it up, knock all the survivors off, and then block it so that the survivors can't work on it. This can give you a lot of time to get to that gen to protect it, or it can give you like buffer room if you have pop or something. The reason why this combo is lower on this list is because when gens are blocked, they don't actually regress. So the effect where Pain Resonance continues to regress will not work while Dead Man Switch is active. However, I believe it will start to regress after Dead Man Switch deactivates. All right, coming into the next place spot on this list is Corrupt Intervention and Lethal Pursuer. This is basically just the ultimate early pressure build. They work in conjunction with each other because Corrupt Intervention slows down survivors from working on gens, and Lethal Pursuer speeds up when you find the first survivor. And on top of that, you can see where everyone spawns with Lethal Pursuer, and then you can choose which person to go to based on the Corrupt Intervention spawns. This combination is going to give you so much pressure in the early game that it's really likely to snowball in your favor in the long run. However, you have to keep in mind that this isn't that good of a perk combination on killers without mobility because you can't really take advantage of the Lethal Pursuer. But if you're playing a killer like Blight or Nurse or Spirit or anybody with high mobility, you're going to be able to get to the survivors quickly and take advantage of this combo. Coming into the 8th spot is Call of Brine and Pop Goes the Weasel. Call of Brine is the newest perk with the new killer that's not actually out yet. It makes it so that when you kick a gen, it regresses at twice the speed. So if you hook somebody and then go to kick a gen with Pop, it's going to reduce that gen by 25% and then continue to regress by an additional 200%. This is an absolute game changer for uncoordinated teams. If you're playing against like a team of a bunch of solo queues and they don't get back on gens quickly, you're going to have a gen that's almost completed go all the way back to 0 in a really short amount of time if the survivors don't get back on it. This can be a great slowdown perk if used properly, and if you pair it with Dragon's Grip, which makes it so that if a survivor touches that gen within 30 seconds of you kicking it, they'll become exposed for a whole minute. And the counterplay to Dragon's Grip is to just not touch that gen for those 30 seconds because the regular regression speed really isn't that bad. But with Call of Brine, those 30 seconds suddenly reduce the gen by a ton, making it a much more difficult option on whether or not you should counter Dragon's Grip. Coming into the 6th place spot is Starstruck and Agitation. This is a very popular combo a few months ago, but I haven't seen it much lately, and I think that's partly because Starstruck got a little bit of a nerf recently. Correct me if I'm wrong though. But what it does is it makes any survivors in your terror radius become exposed while you're carrying another survivor. And then Agitation not only speeds you up while carrying a survivor, but it also increases your terror radius by a few meters. So pairing these two together makes your Starstruck range much bigger, which makes it much easier to make survivors exposed. However, this combination won't work well on a lot of M2 killers like Huntress or Blight because you have to use your M1 to actually be able to insta-kill them. Coming in at the 5th spot on the list is one of my favorite perk combos on killer, and that's Monitor and Abuse and Infectious Fright. At first glance, this sounds kind of counterintuitive if you don't really know what Monitor does. Infectious Fright makes it so that if you down a survivor, any other survivor within your terror radius will scream, revealing their location. Monitor decreases your terror radius, but what a lot of people don't know is it only decreases it outside of chase. While you're in chase, it actually increases it above what your normal terror radius is. So what this means is if you down a survivor while you're in chase, your terror radius is bigger, making the Infectious Fright range also larger. So it's basically just buffing Infectious Fright, which can cause you to snowball so much easier if you're having a really rough match. This is really good on killers who use Infectious Fright a lot, such as Oni or Myers or Nurse, because it just makes it so easy to find survivors. Coming into the 4th spot, which is an absolute classic, this is Spirit Fury Enduring. Spirit Fury makes it so that if you break 2 pallets, the next pallet that stuns you will instantly break without you having to do anything. So if you pair that with Enduring, which makes your stun cooldown much shorter, then when Spirit Fury is active and they throw down the pallet and they stun you, the pallet disintegrates and it basically doesn't do anything, so you get a free down. This is still an absolutely amazing perk combination, but unfortunately it gets beat out by a lot of the higher combinations on this list, including number 3, which is Ruin and Surveillance. Ruin Surveillance is also a classic perk combination on this list. Ruin, as you all probably know, regresses gens when survivors are not working on it, and Surveillance changes the gens' auras to white when gens are regressing. So if you're using Ruin, the gens automatically regress, triggering the surveillance to activate. So if you're using somebody with high mobility such as Blight or even Freddy with his teleports, then it's going to be really easy to figure out where survivors are and which gens you should go to next. This is one of the best information-based combos in the entire game because you basically know where the survivors are at all times if you have high mobility and you're constantly checking gens. Because on top of the gens turning white when survivors get off of them, they also turn yellow when survivors get back on them. So you'll probably always know when survivors are working on gens and when they're not. The one downside to this perk combo is once they find your Ruin, then you're pretty much screwed because then you have to manually kick gens to have surveillance activate, which is kind of a pain and kind of something you should not be doing anyway. But while Ruin is still up, it's extremely strong. The second place spot is going to literally any good hex perk and Undying. Undying just gives you a second life to your hex perk. So if you apply this to any good hex perk ever, it's gonna be good. You can even apply this to some pretty mediocre hex perks and get a lot of value out of it. For example, you compare it with Retribution to see the auras of survivors twice as long as you normally would be. You compare it with Haunted Ground and get 2 uses of Haunted Ground. And of course, you compare it with Devour Hope because you keep your tokens, which makes it significantly easier to actually get value out of Devour. And as everyone does, you compare it with Ruin to have an extra life for your Ruin totem. Obviously, Ruin Undying is the best option that you can do with this, so I would recommend using that if you want a really strong slowdown combo. But just play around with some of the hex perks because some of them are actually really fun. Like sometimes I'll even use the worst hex perk in the game, Huntress Lullaby, and pair it with Undying. And it's actually really funny because against bad survivors, the gen regression is actually insane. And before we get to the first spot, I wanted to give 2 honorable mentions to some combos. The first one is Trail of Torment and Dragon's Grip. This is not necessarily a good combo, but it's kind of a fun combo because again, with Dragon's Grip, it makes it so that the next 30 seconds after kicking a gen, any survivor that touches it will become exposed. And Trail of Torment makes it so that when you kick a gen, you become undetectable. Do you see where this is going? You kick a gen, activate Dragon's Grip, and activate your undetectable. Then a survivor will touch the gen thinking that you're gone, when in actuality, they just fell for your bait. There are a lot of flaws with this perk combination though, which is why it's only an honorable mention. Trail of Torment is deactivated by somebody touching the gen. So if you go far away from the gen and you're coming back, you're not going to be undetectable anyway. So you have to stay relatively near the gen after you kick it. And with Trail of Torment, it makes the gen's aura yellow for the survivors. So they'll be cautious because they know that you're undetectable right now. This is a really hard one to pull off, but it's very fun if you manage to get it to work. The next honorable mention is going to Sloppy Butcher and Thanatophobia. This used to be an absolutely incredible combo because the old Thanatophobia also increased your healing speeds. So that paired with Sloppy Butcher made this such a pain. But now Thanatophobia does not do that, but they can still work in conjunction with each other because it forces survivors to heal because they don't want to have the slowdown from Thanatophobia, but then their healing takes 20% longer. So they're forced to do an action that's 20% slower. This can be really useful in some situations, but since Thanatophobia's nerf, it's not as good anymore, which is why it's only getting an honorable mention. And lastly, the #1 perk combination on this list, which you probably know exactly what it is, but that is Ruin and Pop. Ruin will usually be active for the first 1 or 2 generators, and then you have Pop for the rest of the game once the survivors find and cleanse it. Both of these perks are complete meta perks, and most people use them in different builds, but if you use them together, you essentially have a backup plan for if your Ruin gets cleansed. Then you compare this with a bunch of other slowdown perks such as Undying, or Pain Resonance, or Deadlock, or even Eruption if you really wanted to. Plus you compare it with Call of Brine, like that other combo on this list. And if you're able to get hooked really quickly, you're going to be able to have a ton of gen slowdown throughout the entire game. Of course, there are a few flaws with this perk combination that you have to be wary of. If the survivors decide to just push through Ruin, and you have 3 other perks that only work when Ruin is no longer available, then you just wasted 3 perk slots that could have been used for something else. But most survivors do cleanse Ruin, so you shouldn't be worried about that. And also, if you're not able to get a lot of hooks, then you're not going to be able to use Pop, which is basically the entire point of this build. So if you're on top of your game, then you should be fine. I think a pair of literally any of those slowdown perks is the best perk combination / perk build in the game. If this video helps you out and you want to see more like this, feel free to drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Again, come join my Discord server if you want to ask me questions or find other people to play with. The link is in the description. And I think that's all I have for you today, so I will see you all in the next one. Peace!